Copic friends, Michelle Houghton here. I hope you are up for a little experimenting today. That is what I'm doing. So I have some new images on my blog, and we have this whole series of butterflies on there, and then I have a couple new ones that are very different, kind of soft, not real distinct edges or patterns. So I printed them out, but I did not print them out on my standard paper. I don't know if you can tell this by just me moving them around, but these are not on the smooth white cardstock. One is on Yupo, and this particular Yupo is the kind that is semi-transparent. I was trying to think if I had the package so I could tell you exactly what I was coloring on. Probably would be better. Translucent Yupo is what I'm working on today. So here's the Yupo translucent. They also have opaque white, but this one I'm out of that currently. Actually, I'm not, but I wanted to play with this a little bit. So it has a little bit, you can actually see my fingers through it, just barely, barely, barely. The surface feels the same. It has that plasticky feel to it. And then the other one is mineral paper. Someone had recommended for multimedia. Someone had recommended they really were enjoying playing on that. And so I've printed them out. This went through my printer. These are digital images you can buy on my blog. And I printed them out on both of them. Now, if you've ever printed or stamped anything on Yupo, you know it takes forever to dry. So these actually sat almost a full week, and I can literally still pull the ink off. So I truly might be making a mess here. I have not heat set them. So we may be in for a real doozy of a mess. The mineral paper, however, seems to have set, and it's set fairly quickly. So one big difference there. I will tell you that my printer tends to work really well for setting and then using Copic with it. So it doesn't have to do with my printer, even though these have been printed through my printer. It's not the type of ink, it's the type of paper that's having that effect. So the first thing I thought I'd do was do some coloring just with my markers. And I thought I'd start on this little butterfly kind of looking to the left. And I just pulled out a group of kind of fun ones. So this is an R22 light prawn. So I'm going to start, and I do want to bump into that black a little bit. I'm of the mindset of I might mess up a nib, and I'm actually okay with that. Now what you can see happen, kind of watch, and I'll get close for a second, because I want you guys to see this. See how it's leaving these watermarks? Because that is a non-porous surface. It has that plasticky surface still, and this is the mineral paper. It's not going to go smooth. Now it smooths where it's wet and spreads, but then it's going to hit those edges. So let's see what happens when we take a lighter color. This is actually an RV42. Elena played with this one, or is going to play with this one this month on Violetta ink. And so I wanted to play with it too. It's very similar. When I pulled out my markers, it's very similar to R21, and that's why I thought I'd pull out the R22. Now with this lighter marker, I'm getting some smearing of that printer ink. I bet I can correct it. Haha. But that means I'm going to want to be a little bit careful of going over those black dots and black lines, especially if I'm trying to avoid ruining a nib. Yeah, looks like the lighter ink is going to do that a little bit, but you can see what's happening here. I'm not really getting a blend. The ink is moving while it's wet, and then as soon as it hits a dry area or it starts drying, it creates these edges. Now that is really, really standard when it comes to kind of that non-porous, slick, kind of photo-esque finish. Then I thought I'd bring in a YR This is a YR65. I have no idea what that says. Atoll? A-T-O-L-L? Boy, yeah. Someone's eyes better be working better than mine today. Oh, here we go. Atoll. A-T-O-L-L. If I look at it on my screen above, it's actually enlarged. Ha. And then this is YR61, yellowish shell, no, yellowish skin pink. My guess is that name has changed. So if you have newer markers, you may or may not have yellowish skin pink, but you probably have a YR61 that's the same color. So here's the challenge. When you have a surface like this, it's not going to truly blend. I can work back into that color, but look what's happening. I'm picking up those pinkish tones, those RV tones on my marker. All I have to do is kind of wipe them off to the side. You can have a scratch paper handy for that, but you're going to end up with this painterly effect. You're not going to end up with blended color. So you have to think about, what do I want to lay down first? What do I want working its way into the other colors? And you can still layer, but it's not going to do what you're used to. So this is the mineral paper, and this is kind of what I was anticipating. I'm just coming back with a second layer, kind of adding some more color on there. I like the look. I like the look. I think it's kind of fun to have that painterly. So just adding more color on there. But again, you can see all of those little strokes in there. And that is what that looks like. Now, if we shift onto the Yupo, I'm going to do pretty much the exact same series. So I'm going to start with the R22. Ooh, and see, I barely hit that ink, that black ink, and it just pulled right with my marker. So I'm going to try to avoid a little bit that ink. So I'm not going to go all the way over into those dots. I probably should try heat setting this too, because I've done that before as well, as I've heat set it and it worked a little bit better. I'm thinking I might like doing the darker after the lighter. So then I'm going to come up and do my lightest color. That's not it. My YR61. Kind of push that into the RV. And then the YR 65. Get a quick comparison. So this is the Yupo, and this is the mineral. So the mineral does, because it right now with the Yupo being that translucent, I feel like there is a little bit more of an opaque sense to the mineral paper. Try putting a second layer of ink as well, because I did that on the mineral paper. Let's see what it looks like. But it's really always interesting to me to watch this move on the paper where you can see that action happening. It's always really kind of different than what we're used to. And bringing that wire in from above. And you can see it where I hit that, and then I'm getting those RVs on here. So I'm taking this and just rubbing it out. So you have to decide what do you want on top of what, because it's going to go kind of back and forth, and you're going to end up with some of those hard edges. So you have to kind of decide where do you want those to land. So really similar finished look between the two papers. I would say the Yupo is definitely going to be harder to get your ink, whether it's your stamped or your printed ink, to sit on solid. You can actually see where my alcohol bumped into the back of the butterfly there and actually pushed at that ink a little bit. And that, again, it has to do with the paper. It's not the printer ink, because this is the exact same printer ink. It truly does have to do with the paper itself that's doing that. So the other thing we could do, I thought would be fun, is what if I think I've got a straw. Oh, I do. Ha ha ha. And did a little bit. Don't need much. I thought it'd be fun though to try this. It doesn't need a whole lot of ink, but kind of color effect on these little butterflies. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the refill, I'm doing 1 or 2 little drops, and then blowing. It actually is very helpful to have a straw. And then you can leave some little drips and watch them spread. I mean, it's pretty cool, if you ask me. The fun part with stuff like this is that you hold on to those edges, and so you get this layered effect of these little edges kind of blowing out the back of the butterfly. And I always really, really like that. Wonder, let's do this up close and see if we can't get there we go. So I used 3 of the same colors we used on the other butterfly, and but you can see the amount of movement you get. I can show you. This is that mineral paper. If I put a single drop, it sits pretty tight, but as soon as you add it onto a wet surface, it's going to move. So if I add more, you can blow it around pretty good. And it's still moving. This is how people do those flowers, is they'll sit and they'll blow like 4 or 5 drops out, and then they'll come in and they'll do the next one with only 2 and dry, push that out, let it sit. They'll dry it with their air dryer. Then they'll come back in and they'll create another ring, maybe this time with a single, or they'll do a different color. But they'll create those layers or petal effect with their ink. And that I didn't let sit long enough. I need to let it move on its own. So now it's pushing on that one. But you get the idea. If I let things dry as they go, I'd have a better effect. Let's let that sit for a second and we'll see if we can get one more ring in there. But you can see how much movement is happening on that mineral paper. It's quite a bit. So let's shift. And my concern with the Yupo is that we're going to end up just blowing out the butterfly entirely. And you could definitely experiment with heat setting. My concern with heat setting, and I've tried this before, is when I heat set on Yupo, the paper is so plastic that it really crumpled up and browned the paper. So just be aware of that when you're going in. That you could get that effect, whether you want that or not. All right, so same deal. Let's start back here. And maybe if I move fairly quickly. Actually, it's sitting pretty well, surprisingly enough. Make sure I'm getting these back on the right containers. That's in the right one. Yay. All right, so there's the Yupo, and with this effect, because I'm not bumping into it, it's actually holding pretty well. Let's do a couple drips. All right, quick interruption there, and my guess is this is almost dry, if not dry. This is on the Yupo. Oop, just got some dots on there. And we're adding, yeah, you can see very different effect on the dry ink. I'm always amazed at the amount of movement on a surface like this, though. How far that ink will travel. Almost like a bounce back effect. And I'm not doing any blowing on this paper, and it's traveling considerably farther when it has that ink trail to kind of follow along. If I do a single drop, let's see if I can get it to stop a little earlier. Maybe, maybe not. Wow, so it's really pushing outward quite a bit. And it did on the mineral paper too. I felt like we were able to get a little bit of layering. And I wonder if it just is taking longer to dry on the Yupo. So we're ending up not with as much drying in between. And so it blends itself into that next layer even more. We're not getting that ruffled effect. So that it'd be more important on the Yupo to be using a heat gun or something. All right, so let's pull this one back over. So we've got the Yupo butterfly and the mineral paper. And those are really, really similar. The Yupo to me, and you can see this from butterfly to butterfly, there is a lot more movement of ink. It moves further across the page, where this does have those edges quite a bit more, so it doesn't move quite as much. And you can see that then in the evidence. This is the mineral, and then this is the Yupo, where you can get that ruffling effect of those different layers. And like, I bet if we came back in now and added a dot on that dry, again, it's going to come out and create a new edge on that mineral paper. I just think it's interesting how much the Yupo is moving further. See where this is slowing down and stopping? This is just going out until it hits. Yeah, it's going all the way out until it hits that ridge. So if you were trying to do some of that little flower effect, or you wanted those little ripples and ruffles, the mineral paper might actually be a better solution for you. So anyway, some fun experimenting with butterflies and some coloring and ink blowing on mineral and Yupo paper. And again, these butterflies are ones that I drew and are on my blog over at copicintthecraftroom.com, or you could look it up as scrapweaver.com. Either one is going to get you there. So thank you so much for joining me today. If you have any questions about Copic or what I'm doing on this video or any of my others, just put those in the comments below. I try to get to those a couple times a week as if I see them, and try to get those answered promptly. Make a point of heading over to my blog and signing up for the newsletter there so you know when my new online classes come out as well. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a happy, colorful day.